Hello, everybody, and welcome back to Beer and Money. My name is Ryan Burklo.
And I'm Alex Collins.
And on today's episode, we're going to be talking about what is probably the top question, at least that we get, or maybe the top reason, Alex, that we get people wanting to work with us.
Yeah.
And that is, when can I be done?
Which is a great question. I absolutely love getting that question because it means that somebody's truly engaged and like really wants an answer. And they're looking for, okay, guys, I've been at this for 15, 20, 30 years. How does all this stuff come together so that I can walk away?
Yeah, and it's not even walk away, Alex. I think oftentimes it's just like they don't want to be they might want to go part-time. They're just sick of working their tail off. So they're wanting to know, are they going to be okay? Right?
Yeah.
And so that's really today's episode is we're going to look at how to prioritize and organize yourself so that you can. But before we dive into that, hopefully everyone watching us on YouTube, that is, if you're in your car, ignore what I'm about to say. But if you're watching us on YouTube, you've got a beverage in your hand because after all, the show is called Beer and Money. So Alex, I heard you crack one. What are you drinking there?
I'm drinking Bodhi Zifa.
Bodhi Zifa, I like it. I went with Black Raven, shocker, and it's Moon Lager.
Nice.
And so we were there this past weekend with the family, and we were playing a crazy game of Yahtzee. So one of the days we're going to have like one of our listeners come up and see my family and I drinking beer. My family, as in my wife and I, not my children. I don't want to get in trouble out there.
Or get Black Raven in trouble.
Yeah, there you go. So, well, cool. Let's dive into today, Alex. So, right, I think the top thing that we normally dive into with anyone that is wanting to answer the question, when can I be done? And their concern a lot of times is they've got all these different, we'll call them assets or different pieces of their financial picture, and they have no idea how it comes together. They're not organized in any way from the standpoint of how does this come into a plan?
Or even if they are organized because they're working with an advisor of some kind, all of the discussion and all of the individual components are siloed or compartmentalized. They're not talked about in a comprehensive manner where it's like, this is how this affects this other component.
Yeah, it's just, I mean, we have several clients that come on board with us where they're talking to us and like, yeah, all my previous advisor did was really talk about investments / rate of return, and that's it. They never went into how does this all come together so that I can stop working, Mr. or Mrs. Advisor, right? So I'm going to share my screen here real quick. After all, this is YouTube, and this is where we can do a good job of bring the visual side to the conversation here. If you're listening to us on Apple or Spotify, we'll do our best to explain what we're sharing here on the screen, but definitely check us out on YouTube because I do think, especially when we're talking about money, it gives a better picture of what it is we're talking about. So, Alex, as we're staring at this, right, this is a tool that we utilize and it was built with very specific purpose, right? We've got 4 domains color-coded here in terms of how a financial plan comes together. So, as always, where we always start and where we always end, because that's all we all care about, is this area in green, and that's called cash flow or income, if you will.
100%. That's the foundation of our plan. It's what we aspire to. We want our cash flow to remain as high as possible, as tax-free as possible, never having to worry about running out of it for our entire life and taking the least amount of risk to go ahead and create that. Well, and guess what? When we get to retirement, we want the exact same thing. We want our cash flow to continue. We want it to be as high as possible. We want to not have to worry about taxes with it. We want to make sure that it never runs out. So when we do financial planning is really cash flow planning, and it's about making sure that our cash flow stays there now and we're saving enough of it and building enough wealth to go ahead and make sure that when we stop working, whether it's by choice or by outside factor, that we're able to continue cash flow in the manner that we want. And so I find it hilarious when everyone's talking about oh, I need to get my number. Okay, cool. Would you want more? If we could deliver more, would you want more? I've yet to have anybody say no to that, but it's just comical.
Yeah, and well, it's funny. Like as you said that, you and I cringe, but I would wager a guess that people watching us or listening to us, they probably are slightly confused by what you just said because I think that's what people want. They're wanting to know when they can stop working their tail off. So they're wanting to know like what's the magical number, and where we get at is really it's not necessarily a number. It's more of when can we turn on the cash flow and what cash flows do we want. That there is no specific number because we've said this all along. You could be worth $5 million, as we're showing here on the screen, and maybe that turns on 200,000 of income. Was that enough for your lifestyle? Or you could be $4 million and maybe that turns on $250,000 of income, right? So it's $1 million less in assets, yet turns on a higher income stream. So again, it's not about the number. It's about what income do you need, and then what's the strategy to do it.
Well, not even what income do you need? It's what income do you want? Because there's two
Yeah,
different numbers, right? There's the I have to have this coming in. That's the need. And then there's the, well, I want to go visit my grandkids. I want to go play golf. I want to travel. I want to buy a new car. I want to, whatever the I want tos are, like that gets stacked on top. And so when we're doing planning for folks, it's truly just income planning, right? It's okay, what is it that we really need to have coming in the door to like make sure that our base level needs are met in retirement? And then after that, it's what do we want to have occur? Because heck, if you're okay with eating cat food out of a tin and living in a box under a freeway, you can retire tomorrow.
I just imagine Eric doing that. Eric, if you're listening, you're welcome. Um, we'll definitely have to share this episode with them. Um, so I mean, we've kind of beaten up on cash flow, I think, enough here from the standpoint of like, obviously, this is key. Yet, for whatever reason, our industry or a lot of other advisors don't focus in this arena. Okay. Now, if our income is what we care about today, and by the way, tomorrow, well, wouldn't we want to make sure that that income is protected?
Yeah.
Which is this yellow portion up top. I think a lot of people, they think of protection of assets, which is a piece of this, don't get me wrong. But the whole reason you're protecting the assets is why? So that you can have the income when you want it, right? So, we have our worst threats that we always go over. And, we're talking about lawsuit, premature death, death in retirement, by the way, which is a conversation that often isn't like really dove into. Dove in, is that a word, Alex? Dove into. And then you've got the medical side of stuff, long-term care or maybe disability when you're in pre-retirement, right? So we've got these huge concerns or risks out there that can affect our income. A risk that's not necessarily up there in the yellow is the volatility aspect in retirement. Volatility is our friend pre-retirement, but in retirement, it's not necessarily our friend. It'll let you set yourself up in retirement for it to be your friend.
When there's many people right now that are like, wait, volatility is my friend pre-retirement. The answer to that is yes. And most people don't necessarily view it that's the same way that we do. One of our goals is to get people to think about their money a little bit differently, because if we keep doing the same thing over and over again that's been done in the past, we're going to wind up with the same results, which is somewhere in the neighborhood of 10 to 20% of people being able to have the same retirement lifestyle as they had pre-retirement. And that is true whether you're making $50,000 or $500,000 or $5 million or $50 million.
Yep. So we've got to take these risks into consideration, and the risk is always to our income, right? Pre-retirement and retirement. And by the way, as we talk about this, and we go through this with our clients, right? If income is our greatest financial resource today, and oh, by the way, tomorrow, when do you want to rip off the protection piece of your financial balance sheet?
Never.
Never. right? When you look at it that way, the answer to that question is always never. So we've got to make sure that this part of the balance sheet is taken care of, and that's the protection piece. So that's another part of getting financially organized, because everybody's got auto and home insurance, right? Maybe umbrella policies. They've got all these different protection pieces, but how have they analyzed it from the standpoint of protecting their income? And then more specifically, how to fund it? How does this all come in together into the plan?
Well, and more importantly, Ryan, how does that change over time?
Yeah.
Like, because it's, while you talked about it as the protection layer as it being one thing, it's not a homogenous thing. The level of protection someone should have when they first graduate college at 22 or 24 or whenever versus somebody who's in their 30s or 40s or 50s or in retirement in their 60s and 70s and 80s, it's all different. And it needs to be constantly reviewed and monitored for, like, okay, how do we need to make minor course corrections? It's never something where we're going to, like, we don't ever want to just rip it completely away. And we don't want to typically make wholesale changes. We want to make small incremental changes where it's appropriate. Now,
Well, and it starts with, just sorry to interrupt you just real quick. The hard part is the initial plan.
yeah,
That's when a lot of the work goes into it, right? So I don't want people to get really scared and say, holy crap, Ryan and Alex are suggesting we go into this like full financial planning mode every single year. That's not what we're saying. The initial plan is the in-depth type of situation, so we can get to where you get your balance sheet set up the way that it needs to be. Then, to what you were just saying, you fine tune it as things progress.
and occasionally there are big life events: getting married, having kids, changing jobs, getting a big promotion, getting a big bonus, moving, buying a second home. All of these things that pop up and affect life will necessitate reviewing and modifying your plan. So it's not like like do it once, set it, forget it. Um, and it might be on autopilot for 2, 3, 4 years before you need to, like, have a big aha of, like, oh, hey, like, we need to come back and redo that. So it's important to make sure that we're
Yep.
monitoring things on an ongoing basis.
And I think we'll end the protection piece on this. Like, if you're working with an advisor, they should be proactive with all of these pieces, frankly, to keep you on track. So you're not having to think about this all the time. I think that is a huge value add that an advisor should do. So that's the protection piece. So that's part two of getting financially organized. Then we've got the assets, right? Like, this is the big topic around retirement planning. It's like, how, as you've referenced, what's my number? It's more of, okay, where are your assets? How are they taxed? And what's the strategy to turn them into income?
And there's no one answer here. Like, everyone looks a little bit different, and therefore everyone's plan should be a little bit different. Now, we're still going to have, like, a lot of the same strategies, a lot of the same consistency is going to exist throughout. And everyone's different, so we need to craft this in a different way depending upon what the rest of your circumstances look like.
Yeah. So again, where investments are important. I don't want to skip over that part to say that they're not important. They're just not the most important from the standpoint of rate of return conversation, right? How all this comes together is more important than the rate of return. Rate of return is a piece, a variable of the plan, but it shouldn't rely, your plan should not rely upon the rate of return to make or break the plan.
Well, and one of the other things that we talk into a decent amount, Ryan, is we want to control the things that we can control. And while, yes, if we invest in bonds or CDs as opposed to stocks or whatever else, we can control a little bit of rate of return. However, no advisor, ourselves included, has any control over what the stock market does. And so, like,
What rate of return you get and in what order, negative or positive, and what year you get it, right? Like, hopefully our listeners have heard us say this by now. Like, up until retirement, like, the order doesn't necessarily matter unless you set yourself up for the order to matter. But in retirement, depending on your strategy, that order matters a ton,
Absolutely.
right? And so I think it's just something that is just skipped and overlooked so often because the rate of return is the more fun conversation to have, and that's what a lot of people kind of base, what it is that we do for a living, which is kind of, sad given that our industry has done that to ourselves. It's just a variable there. And the more important part is making sure that all of these four domains align and strategize with each other so that that risk is taken care of.
Well, and so one of the things that you will see in every single financial ad ever is past performance does not guarantee future returns. And the reason that it's in there is because it's true.
Yep.
And so as advisors, we don't want to focus on the things that we don't control. We want to focus on the things that we have direct impact on and can control because it's going to be way more repeatable. It's going to be way more effective for our clients to be able to do that than it is to go ahead and try to guess where the market's going.
Yep.
Because we firmly believe in an efficient market where information is built into the marketplace really, really quick to the point where we can't actually trade on existing information because it's already built into the
It's already
current
built
pricing
out
model.
there.
Yeah.
Exactly. So that's the asset side. And then the last domain here is liabilities, right? And it's everything, it's the debts that we have, but it's also the tax bills, right? And it might be the deferred tax bill, right? It might not be your tax bill this year. It might be the tax bill that you've kicked that can down the curb, and that curb happens to be 30 years long, right? So when we look at that is how do we make sure that the debts are at least taken care of from the standpoint of so it doesn't make our lifestyle so crazy high because the expenses or debts are so high, and how do we mitigate the strategies to minimize taxes and efficient use of our money? Like, should we have some amount of maybe low interest rate debt and keep the assets on the balance sheet rather than pay the debt off?
But so many people get this conversation wrong. They're thinking about it as a conversation of liabilities versus assets. And like, okay, should I liquidate some of the assets to pay off the liabilities and like get rid of it? That'll make retirement easier. Okay, cool. You're not wrong from that standpoint, but why does it make retirement easier? Oh, it's because it affects cash flow. Well, if we liquidate assets, did we affect our cash flow? And the answer is going to be yes. So now the question becomes, is that a trade-off that we want to make? And so now we're evaluating it from a cash flow standpoint, how much money is required to come in, how much money is required to go out. And if we wind up with a net positive from whatever change we're making, well, great, we should make that again and again and again and again until it stops making sense to make that trade. Whether that's paying down debt or turning the asset into income to pay off the debt. Like there are a ton of different methodologies, and the common factor that we all come back to, and this feels like we're beating a dead horse, but it's cash flow. It really is all about cash flow, whether it's cash flow now, cash flow in retirement, cash flow at the end of retirement.
A great example of this for our listeners here, if you go back and check episode 306, we did an episode on whether or not you should overpay your mortgage, right? That's a debt on the balance sheet. We had a conversation around, and we actually analyzed numbers on how to look at that. So make sure you check out that episode. That would help with that conversation if that very topic is on your mind. So
And
Alex, let's
you can take that same concept and apply it to almost any form of debt.
absolutely. So let's wrap this up. We've gone over these four domains. We've got the cash flow, we've got the protection, we've got the assets, we've got the liabilities, right? And we have to get organized in these four domains so that these four domains come together, right? And what we mean by come together, as we've already said, right? The income coming in the door, like prime example is if you buy a house, right?
Mm-hmm.
You put an asset on your balance sheet, you put a debt on your balance sheet. You have to fund that debt with your cash flow. And normally the mortgage company requires you to have home insurance. So you have to purchase protection for for that asset. That one purchase had all 4 domains. The same thing is true in retirement planning. The assets are going to turn on an income stream, hopefully. You're going to pay taxes on it. And depending on what debts you have, comes out of your expenses and lifestyle. And then we're going to have some sort of protection piece possibly in there. How is that protecting the income, and how do you fund that protection piece? All of those domains come together, and that's how you should be looking at the plan, and getting organized in all of these helps you get there.
Yeah. And so when we're making a decision, maybe it's where in assets we put something, we need to take a look and see how it affects all of the other components. Because if we don't, we're only getting at best half the story.
Yep.
At worst, like, we're making decisions based on bad or missing information. And like, the smartest people that I know want all of the information as accurate as possible before they actually make decisions.
Yep. So we hope this episode is valuable for you. If you haven't checked us out on the YouTube channel, check us out there. You can also find those videos on our website at beardmoney.net. And at the top of that page is a contact us button. That's a great spot to either email us with a question from today's episode, or if you've got a topic on your mind that you want us to talk about, that's a great spot for you to reach out to us there. Look, we started this podcast when we used to go to Amazon's campus and do lunch and learns, and we called it Beer and Money. We wanted to make sure that we talk about money in a hopefully a simplistic way, and an educating way, so that you can make decisions for your personal financial life, so you can live the lifestyle that you want. We hope this episode was valuable for you. And as always, Mr. Collins,
cheers.
This podcast is for informational purposes only and is not to be construed as tax, legal, or investment advice. Although the information has been gathered from sources believed to be reliable, please note that individual situations can vary. Therefore, the information should be relied upon only when coordinated with individual professional advice. Guest speakers and their firms are not affiliated with or endorsed by Park Avenue Securities, Guardian, or Quantified Financial Partners, and opinions stated are their own. Guardian, its subsidiaries, agents, and employees do not provide tax, legal, or accounting advice. Consult your tax, legal, or accounting professional regarding your individual situation. All investments and investment strategies contain risk and may lose value. This material is intended for general public use. By providing this content, Park Avenue Securities, LLC is not undertaking to provide investment advice or a recommendation for any specific individual or situation, or to otherwise act in a fiduciary capacity. Please contact a financial representative for guidance and information that is specific to your individual situation. Ryan and Alex are registered representatives and financial advisors of Park Avenue Securities, LLC. OSJ 200 Market Street, Suite 1850, Portland, Oregon 97201. Phone number 503-221-1226. Securities products and advisory services offered through Park Avenue Securities, member FINRA, SIPC. Financial representatives of the Guardian Life Insurance Company of America, Guardian, New York, New York. Park Avenue Securities is a wholly owned subsidiary of Guardian. Quantified Financial Partners is not an affiliate or subsidiary of Park Avenue Securities or Guardian. Ryan Burklo, CA Insurance License Number 0K24924. Alexander Collins, CA Insurance License Number 0H24806.
8101970.1. Expiration date June 2027.